From the Foundation Studio, right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, I want to welcome you to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate together every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, because, as I say every week, we are the capital of the outdoors in America. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi radio network and on SuperTalk TV at C-Spire TV. But if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or listening on your favorite podcast, it's February the 6th, 2023. Wow. I mean, 2023 is speeding by rapidly. Hey, listen, I've got a quick update for you, a legislative update. The House overwhelmingly passed a bill. The number on this bill is HB 999. It creates a dedicated funding source for the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, something that we've worked so hard on here in this state and here on the show. And of course, it's moving along quite nicely. I've been in touch with a lot of the Board of Trustees, and they've been forming this organization and getting it ready to go. Lots of proposals for funding have come toward them. They've hired a new executive director, and I'm really thrilled that the new executive director is our friend Ricky Flint from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. I think he's going to do a great job in that position. He's got such a long history in conservation, understands how all these parts and pieces come together. And so I'm thrilled that the new executive director for the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund is Ricky Flint. But this bill that was passed, 999, it would create a sales tax diversion, which was actually part of the original bill. The bill that was proposed last year had sales tax diversion in it, but it was ultimately changed to what is called an annual appropriation. An annual appropriation, you have to wait until the legislative session and hope that the money is coming. Now the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor have said that they plan to do hopefully around $20 million this year in appropriation, and that's terrific. We need that in order to keep this thing moving forward. But unfortunately, when you have to wait for an annual appropriation, it doesn't enable the kind of long-term planning and implementation that we need to be able to do in this state. So to match the best practices of other states across the U.S. who've done their trust funds similar to our Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, they've done great. Had great success with their federal matching efforts. To match that, we need to have a dedicated funding source. So the House bill proposes a sales tax diversion from the sale of sporting goods. This is what is called a user pay system. It actually enables those participating in the outdoors to have a portion of their tax dollars directed toward conservation. It's really kind of the perfect funding match as far as I'm concerned. This is really important. The sales tax diversion is, I think, the most important thing it does is it divorces future funding from the political process. So you don't have to come back and lobby every single year to get money flowing into the trust fund. Taking this approach, as I mentioned, is really going to create a predictable and reliable funding source for the future, which is going to really help you with long-term planning. And it's also going to match the timing of federal matching fund application cycles. This is really important. One of the most important things this trust fund does is it's going to enable us to maximize leverage opportunities with the federal government. So we can take a state dollar and turn it into 1, 2, 3, or more federal dollars, so that you can really leverage the money. So when you can take a state dollar and turn it into 1 into 4 or 1 into 3, because of the federal matching funds, that's a really, really good thing. So it's good stuff. It's important stuff. And now we look to the Senate for next steps, and we'll keep you up to date on what all that's about. So without any further ado, I'm excited now to have my friend Lake Pickle join us again from On X, Primo's Truth About Hunting TV show, and of course, Primo's Speak the Language podcast, someone who's been on the show many times and someone I enjoy touching base with. How you doing, Lake?
Man, I'm doing great. Can't complain at all. Happy to be here and happy to be back on the show talking to you.
Yeah, well, good, buddy. Hey, listen, I joked with Kyle, who incidentally, as I mentioned prior to the show starting, one of the most patient people on earth. Cal Curley, the producer of SuperTalk Outdoors, who I'm looking at now through the video monitor. But I mentioned to him, looking at your background, you love turkey hunting, don't you?
Yeah, man. It's there's no faulting that at all or doubting that. And yeah, as soon as, I mean, we're in the month of February now, and anyone that knows me, and then my dear wife right now, especially, the second that like we get into late January and it cracks February, and I know February is like a buffer month between fall and winter seasons into spring turkey seasons. My gears have shifted. That's all I've been thinking about lately is gobbling turkey.
Well, actually, we're going to talk a little bit about that too today, and then also Adam Butler, who's head of the turkey program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, is going to join me in the second half of the show. But for the radio audience, describe what I'm talking about by your background.
So behind me, this is my home office, and I had just through the years of working for Primos and then the turkey hunt years before that, I have accumulated a good bit of turkey fans, and I like to display them. And so what I've basically got is I got fans overlapping one another, and they just kind of cover my back wall. Uh, Kind of got the idea from I can't remember where I got. No, a guy did it with grouse fans, and
Yeah.
which was a lot smaller, obviously, because turkey fans are bigger. But yeah, it's my turkey shrine behind me.
It's good. It's good to see. Hey, listen, you heard what I gave an update on the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund as we were getting started, but it's good to see it's good to obviously the fund is up and running, and the trustees are all really, I would say, a dream team of trustees. They've got a new executive director now, Ricky Flint, and they're progressing rapidly, and that's great to see. And it's good to see the legislature as well working on some ways to kind of tweak it a little bit. But we're lucky to have so much focus now on the outdoors, aren't we, buddy?
Oh, there's no doubt, and it's nice to hear you talk about the Stewardship Trust Fund in the way that you are now, because I heard you and I heard Will talk about it for so long, trying to get us to this point where we are now, and to see the follow through, especially with like Ricky Flint. I've liked that guy for quite some time, and so yeah, it's turning out great.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about it. And you and I, the last time we were on the show, we talked about some efforts, some behind the scenes efforts by a few men who breed deer in Mississippi, who have high fences that I call who want to become the deer kings in Mississippi. Some efforts to try to get the commission for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks to pass regulations that enable the sale of whitetail deer in Mississippi, and I'm very strongly opposed to it. I know you are too, but it's been kind of quiet. Sometimes quiet's not good. That means a lot of work's going on behind the scenes to try to get the everything in alignment. But we'll stay focused on it. You hearing anything on your side?
I have not. Like I said, I expected it to not be as quiet as it is, and I don't know if that's because some lights got shed on it and they're moving strategy around. I don't know. I hope that's not the case. But yeah, my position on it has not changed, as you can imagine. I'm very opposed.
Yeah, just one last point about that. If you just want to have a talking point, I'm just talking about anyone who enjoys the outdoors in Mississippi. Why it's important not to sell whitetail deer is that we embrace what is called the North American Wildlife conservation effort in Mississippi. Aldo Leopold is sort of the father of that effort. And what sort of at the core of that is that wildlife belongs to the people, but wildlife belongs to the public. And if you start saying that some wildlife belong to individuals, then it opens up Pandora's box. It makes it difficult to manage things like CWD, but it's just not just CW. It could be any other biological problem that could occur. It makes it harder to manage the resource. It inevitably will cost both sides a ton of money, because if you go look at states like Texas and Wisconsin and others, there's been tremendous court battles over this, where the state Supreme Courts have had to weigh in, and I'm just hoping we can avoid all that. I really do. At the end of the day, wildlife in Mississippi belongs to us. And we can't let a few deer kings in this state change that, because Pandora's box opening would not be good for the average outdoorsman in Mississippi. Anything else you want to say about that, Lake, before we move on?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, I think you summed it up great. Deer, as long the rest of the wildlife is a public resource. The easiest thing for me to point to is a reason to not do this is CWD, but Honestly, if you took CWD completely out of the equation, I still would be completely against it.
Yeah.
It's morally incorrect. It's unethical. It's not what we do as sportsmen. So yeah, I think you did a great job in summing it up.
Well, thank you, Lake. Hey, we're visiting with Lake Pickle, and of course, you know him from Primos. He also is with Onyx. He's got other efforts that he's involved in as well. When we come back on the other side, we're going to look back on this season a little bit and look forward to turkey season as we get ready for Adam Butler in the second half of the show. So we'll be back after this break.
I'll breathe Mississippi till I'm dead and gone. Just carry on. I'll carry on. Mississippi.
Leading the conversation on Mississippi's outdoors. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Lake Pickle with us, and we always enjoy visiting with Lake. We can talk about some serious issues, but most of the time we just talk about our love of the outdoors. Lake, real quick, I want to tell you that what I did this past weekend. When we first entered into the Mississippi Delta a few years ago, we leased 1,000 acres between Greenwood and Blackhawk. It had a really nice lodge on it, and so the hunting there was good but not great, to be quite honest with you. But what we did ultimately, one of the owners of that is the Dunn family, Clinton and Travis Dunn, their father Dwight, just terrific family that we got close to. And they have other land over in Menor City that they farm, and then over in Chula as well. And what happened is, as we sort of got a lay of the land on the original farm, we started sort of reaching out and beginning to lease other land. I leased 2 other farms as a result of that, and now 2 of my best friends have, with one of the members of the Dunn family, bought some additional land that's adjacent to the land in Chula that we lease. So what's happened is we've evolved. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everyone. So this past weekend, we moved from the main farm over to the main farm for the Dunn family and in a house there. And we've been in this particular house for about 6 years, man. Moving, I tell you what, when you live in a house for 6 years, you settle in. And it was pure D heck getting out of that house. But we're so excited about where we are now, and when you lease land, it's just the way it is. So we at least two of my little family members now own, or friends own, some land now that's adjacent to land that we hunt, and I think that trend will continue. But when you lease land, you got to be willing to kind of move around a little bit. And we dreaded it, but it's behind us now, and we're excited about it. So that was my past weekend. That's how we ended the season, having to do a big move. But you've heard having to move before, haven't you?
It's like you said, there's a lot of pros to leasing good hunting ground, but it comes with some cons, as does everything in life. And so, yeah, I'm no stranger in having to move camps. Heck, we've done it. I feel like ever since I told Brad and Jimmy one time, ever since we left Cottonmouth, I felt like we was a traveling road show. We just kept just keep bouncing around, but it's just, I mean, it's part of it. As from a Primo standpoint, honestly, while it was difficult, it made it more relatable, because I mean Cottonmouth, I mean, there's a place in my heart where Cottonmouth will always live, but what Primos and myself are having to do now with moving around from lease to lease, that's a lot more relatable
Yeah, it is. It is.
5% of the hunters in this state.
Yeah, I know. When you guys moved to the Bluffs, you did either a show or certainly a video piece on it that you posted at the Primos Truth About Hunting YouTube site. And going through the memories of the old place and gathering up stands and all. Man, I tell you what, it's hard. It's hard moving from one land to another. But you demonstrated it.
Well, and so there was one particular one in that video. It showed it in the video. We called it the Bodock stand, and for no other reason. You were in this big kind of select cut. But there was this, when you sat in the tree, like directly at your 12 o'clock, about 80 yards out there was this big old bodock tree. So it just named it the bodock stand. And we had so many good rut hunts in that stand. When it was rutting and the buck started cruising, chasing does around, that is where you wanted to be. We called in. I killed a good buck out of that stand. Brad killed a good. I don't know how many bucks we killed out of that stand. It was just one of those spots that even if you couldn't kill a buck, you wanted to go there. It was just nonstop chasing. You were gonna see something. And I remember pulling those lock-ons out of that tree, and I was just kind of like, man.
It's hard, man. I hear you.
Yeah.
My friend Terry Waldrop bought 30 acres adjacent to the 1,000 acres that I leased, and we ultimately flipped this back to the owner. That all went pretty well, but it was the prettiest 30 acres you've ever seen in your life. Bordered by a bottom and then a sort of a creek on one side, and it just was a major transition point. So he killed a beautiful 10-point last year that we had on camera, and this year I had two of the best hunts I've ever had in my life. Both 10 points. One at the main camp at Terryland that I'm just telling you about now. Then one over in Menor City. But it was the Terryland story is very much that it's a great transition point during the rut, and if it's rut, that's where you want to be. And we'll miss that. We'll miss those memories. I mean, there are memories all over that place. Just you being in the outdoors with family and friends. It's all about the memories. But we're going to make new memories at our new place, and most of our best hunting basically are on the leases that we have now, that we've had for a few years, and we're excited about the future. But it's hunting is life, isn't it?
It is. I'll tell you one thing that I learned is none of them stung as worse as Cottonmouth did, because we were there for like 6 or 7 years, pretty much exclusively whitetail and waterfowl hunting in that place. Leaving the Bluffs was hard. It wasn't as hard because it kind of brought it to a new light, where it's like, obviously, I mean, there's places about the Bluffs that I think about, that I thought about this past fall, that I'll be thinking about this spring, that I'm like, man, I wonder, how many are gobbling over there. But instead it's kind of shifted towards, that's going to keep happening. There's no hunting spot that lasts forever. You're going to have to move. That's just life. And so instead I think more on like, well, what am I going to find at the next place? There's that next good spot. I just got to keep looking. I'll find it. I just got to look long enough.
Hey, one of the benefits of this land, this 500 acres that they bought adjacent to the 250 acres that I lease, is that the duck hunting there is really good. We had some of the funnest duck hunts toward the end of the year. Have a beautiful cypress lake, and then flooded bottoms, and then cornfields that are flooded. Oh my gosh, it's just set up for great hunting, and the views are amazing. My buddy Terry and Jordan, my son, and I had really the best duck hunt I've ever had. Just being together and laughing at each other and ribbing each other. Duck hunting is, I know we've talked about this before, but it is the ultimate social sport, isn't
it? Yeah. I think I tell people all the time, that's one of the things that draws me to it the most. That's like the first type of hunting that I took my wife on was a duck hunt, because I didn't want to put her in a deer stand where we have to be like, shh, the entire time, Whereas like we go duck hunting, and whether the duck hunting is slow or whether it's awesome, we can talk and find something to laugh about, and of course I like hunting with my dog, and there's duck hunting is one of my favorites for sure.
Hey, listen, when you look back on this season in terms of your Mississippi hunts, what stands out to you?
Honestly, I'm going to go back to duck hunting, because when we went to the Bluffs at Primo's, one of the things we gained, like at Cottonmouth, we had whitetails and we had waterfowl. We did not have turkeys. At the Bluffs, we had whitetails, we had turkeys, we didn't have waterfowl. And so I missed duck hunting. Like I got to go those years we were at kudzu, but it was here and there. It was like when I had a weekend, or I could slip away for a morning and go with a buddy. Whereas like this year, me and my dog, who I'm very fond of and who I love hunting with, me and him, we hunted as much as my truck engine and my wife would allow. So we went a lot.
How did Will and them do at their new place?
They did good. They did good. Of course, we're kind of like we said, it's a new endeavor because it's a spot we've never been to. So there's a figuring out process. And like I said, I hunted with Brad. It was the last week of the season in Mississippi, and before we even went hunting, I was in the camp house with him and Jimmy, and they were already talking about, well, next year we know we have to do this, and next year, it's already starting to place the pieces together on how you can improve and how you can get better, and just things that you learn. I mean, it's the first season in a new spot. It's like you kind of got to get familiar with it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. What I have done over the years is develop a relationship with a really, really good bulldozer operator. It can help me build some new roads and create some new food plots in areas where you learn the land. You learn the land. And the other thing is I've got two family, mostly family. There's a couple of friends that hunt with me, and we'll be 4 or 5 of us on a weekend, and we want to be able to spread the pressure out. That's something I know you guys focused on a whole bunch, and so we got to create more opportunities for us to be able to spread the pressure out. But it's an exciting time as you look forward, and as we kind of wind down this segment. Turkey hunting, you mentioned, it's just part of who you are. It's part of your DNA. But describe just as briefly as you know why turkey hunting is so magnetic for you.
I became a better woodsman because of turkey hunting. Because when I was a child, it was just box stands and ladder stands. And when I started turkey hunting, I started learning I had to move through the woods, and I had to understand why a turkey was where he was and the right moves I needed to make to get where he was. To me, it was a lot more, this may sound goofy, it was a more intimate style of hunting. And so I just feel so much more in tune with nature when I'm out there, because there's so many more sights and sounds, and spring woods are coming alive. I just love it. And of course, the communication back and forth with the turkey.
Yeah, the opportunity to actually communicate back and forth, like when those ducks come in, for example, and you're having this, and they round and round, and they come in, and you finish 4 all at one time. And turkey hunting's that on steroids, that is for sure. Hey, we'll keep Lake Pickle in the queue and get him back pretty soon. I always enjoy visiting with him. When we come back on the other side, we're going to be spending some time with Adam Butler talking about turkey season. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay. I enjoyed that conversation with Lake Pickle. He's just such a dedicated resource. I refer to him and Will and Brad and Jimmy and all those guys as outdoor ambassadors for Mississippi, because they represent Mississippi to the nation, really beyond, around the world for that matter. And it just loves the outdoors. So it's just fun checking in with Lake. Let's turn to the page now. Move over to my friend Adam Butler, who's the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And first of all, let me just say good morning, Adam. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We're doing really good. Hey, listen, we talked about, of course, the radio audience couldn't see it. Those on YouTube and Facebook could, and SuperTalk TV. Lake's background of all those turkey fans back there. He called it his turkey. What do you call it when we were together? Anyway, what was that, Kyle? You were about to say, but but anyway. Yeah, it was definitely his prized possession, but you don't have a background, Adam.
I feel a little bit unprepared. I'm just sitting here in the conference room at the MDWFP office. I just got a gray background. I'm not.
You got some work to do, man. He called it shrine. That's what he called it, a turkey shrine. That's right. It came back to me, but yeah, it was awesome to see that back there. But he loves the turkey hunting, and as he was describing it to us before we went to break just a few minutes ago, what he learned about the outdoors by going out there turkey hunting, the lay of the land, the conversation with the turkey, just the overall experience taught him so much about the outdoors. But you hear that all the time, don't you, Adam?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always quick to point out how passionate, Mississippians are about turkey hunting. We're not the only state where I think as deep a turkey hunting tradition as we have. There's a couple of others you can name, Alabama and a few other deep South states, but we're certainly in a pretty select group of places in the United States when it comes to turkey hunting. And you're right. I mean, turkey hunting, because of the way it is, it's so interactive. You're holding a conversation with that bird. A lot of times you go back and hunt the same turkey day after day after day. So you learn a lot about the outdoors and just the whole thing. It's a very unique experience, and we're blessed to have it here.
And what's interesting about the turkey hunting dimension in Mississippi, this is generally true that the further north you go, the better the deer hunter. Certainly, the bigger the deer are going to get, and the same thing goes true for duck hunting. Certainly, there's duck hunting in the Pascagoula River, and certainly duck hunting here along the coast. You can go offshore and do some sea duck hunting. But for the most part, the further north you go, the better the duck hunting is going to be. But turkey hunting is something that's really there are little pockets of wonderful turkey hunting all over the state, and that's one of the reasons why I refer to Mississippi as the capital of the outdoors. That turkey dimension really adds a lot to the ledger, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and and what you see, if you're kind of a nerd about it like I am, you see that those populations around the state do fluctuate. So some parts of the state are trending up, some parts of the state are trending down, but we have good turkey hunting throughout, and we're really blessed in that way. Any place that you can find, big pretty hardwood bottoms with some nice piney woods, maybe with some burning going on in them and stuff like that, you're going to have some turkeys. So we've got that sort of habitat all over the place here, and it really works out where we have good populations.
So you mentioned just a little bit about the habitat. The perfect scenario, like my friends actually bought some land in Shula, and it has some relative. The tree growth on it is, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, but no really big trees. There are certainly some big trees around a bottom, a beautiful lake that they have, but you don't tend to see a lot of turkeys when there's a lot of young growth, do you?
Well, not exactly. It depends on what you mean. So turkeys, I really almost, when I talk to people about turkey habitat, I refer to you have to almost think of them as like two different species all rolled into one. So for most of the year, what turkeys want, what adult turkeys really focus on are really, really open habitats that you're going to find in older timber stands. So think of that, like the quintessential turkey hunting mental image people have is like that really open hardwood bottom where you can see really far. It's really pretty, picturesque vista, long view. They like that. They like being around fields and things like that where they can see really far. And that's because they're so worried about predators, they're having to use their eyesight. And so most of the time, those are the kind of places that turkey's going to be. Really, really open woods, open habitats, stuff like that. But the flip side is the hens, when they're nesting and when they're raising their young, are very dependent upon habitats that are almost the exact opposite, where they need cover. They need concealment. When they're sitting on the nest, they're on the ground, they're vulnerable. They've got to have a lot of heavy, dense brush that kind of hides them from predators. And then when they're young hatch, at least for the first couple of months, they're also really vulnerable to predation. So they got to be in some thick stuff that keeps them concealed in camouflage. And so what that means is the ideal turkey country, if you will, is really diverse. It's got a lot of the really open, older timber stuff, but it also has to have some of that really younger, scrubby stuff like you're describing. And it's got to have it all kind of intermingled with one another. And that's part of the reason why you don't really see turkeys super abundant everywhere, is because you got to have the right combination of things mixed together in sort of the right ways to provide all of their needs. And that's a very special sort of a landscape when you can find it.
Well, this land that I'm mentioning that my friends own, you think about the natural predators for turkey, like bobcats or coyotes or whatever they are. But I wondered, while we were there, I noticed a pack of dogs going through, from somewhere nearby, and they looked like they might have been, Labrador mix or something like that. It wasn't close enough to them to really know, but there's probably 5 or 6 of them in this pack. Is that also a predator for turkeys?
It could be, and if nothing else, free roaming dogs like that can kind of harass hens when they're on a nest. So you can imagine, a pack of dogs like that, if they smell a hen while it's nesting, they're going to go in and investigate. And even if all they do is make the hen abandon its nest, a lot of times they won't necessarily come back if they've been disturbed. So That's not something we would normally think of as like a main predator, but certainly it's not, not ideal for turkeys. In fact, there was a study, one of the earliest studies done with turkeys in Alabama back in the late 60s by Dr. Dan Speake at Auburn, found that free range and feral dogs were a pretty significant problem spot for the turkey populations that he was studying. So again, not like you said, not like a bobcat or something like that, a traditional predator, but obviously not a friend of the turkey if they're bumping a hen off a nest.
You've had to answer that before. Roaming dogs probably are a constant aggravation for landowners in Mississippi. That's something that you're used to hearing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think back to a visit I did with a landowner, probably a decade or more ago, and it was down in Pike County, if I remember correctly. And man, his place was perfect, beautiful turkey woods, had everything you would think you need, but his complaint was he didn't have any birds. And, we rode around and looked at the property and couldn't really figure out what was going on. I didn't really have an explanation for him. Man, your place looks great. And finally, kind of later on in our visit, he mentions to me that some neighbors down the road had a big pack of dogs that just sort of free roamed, and about twice a day came through his place, just, causing all kind of chaos and everything. And I finally concluded maybe that's what was going on, that those dogs were causing enough disturbance that it was probably making the turkeys be very wary about going on his property. Just kind of total speculation, but sometimes turkeys you can't figure it out sometimes.
Is there anything legally he can do about that?
Well, that gets into sort of a sticky situation. I mean, obviously, at the local level, call animal control or something like that. I'm not at all condoning, taking matters into your own hands when you're talking about somebody else's animals, but it is frustrating, of course.
Yeah, I know. It's I hear it a lot. At this main farm we used to have that we gave up this year, we got dogs on camera all the time. It was just a kind of a constant aggravation. But that's probably I might actually spend some time with someone in a future show and talk about. I'm not talking about dog hunters, although at times dog hunters are an issue as well. But I'm just talking about free ranging dogs that come through your property and kind of stir things up, where you've really worked hard to calm things down, and then suddenly mass hysteria happens because as you pointed out, feral dogs come running through and just kind of mess things up. Hey, so this is the time of year where turkey talk is a big deal. Do you literally feel your world starting to ramp up?
Yeah, our deer biologists get really busy in August and September, as deer season's coming in. So I'm the opposite. This is my busiest time of the year, January, February, and on into the turkey season. So yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of things to kind of get done. But I tell you what, Ricky, I'm more optimistic right now about turkeys in Mississippi than I have been in a long time. We had a tremendous hatch last summer. One of the best that we've had in a long time. And I've been getting texts and calls from people all deer season that are seeing more turkeys on a deer stand this winter than they've seen in a long time. So I'm pretty optimistic about where we're at.
That's exciting to hear, actually. This is Adam Butler, Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about the implications of a good hatch and why did we have a good hatch. We'll learn some of those details from Adam. We'll see you after this break.
Mississippi.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Adam Butler. I love having him on the show. Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the state of Mississippi. In fact, when Lake Pickle heard that Adam was going to be on the show, he said, wow, I like that guy a lot. And it only goes hand in hand there, actually, that he would like you, given his love of wild turkeys, given your love of wild turkeys. and the fact that he has the Primos Speak the Language podcast, it's just fitting that you guys would know each other real well. Hey,
my wife calls us a cult. She says that all turkey hunters are in a cult together, that we're all so crazy about it. Like there's nobody that's lukewarm about turkey hunting. You're all either like all in or you don't get it at all. And she says that all of us that are, turkey hunters and have been bitten by the bug are in like a big cult together.
Well, my son Jordan is a member of that cult. I can assure you. Hey, so look, Adam, you were saying before we went to the break that the hatch that you're really excited about this year because the hatch was so good. What has to happen for you to have a great hatch across the state?
Well, some of that we know, some of that we don't know. Obviously, we talked a little bit about habitat earlier. So having nesting habitat and brood habitat, that's all important at the local level. The predator context of the property you're talking about in. But when we're talking about like broad swaths of Mississippi having a really good hatch and the stars all aligning across really the entire state and almost the entire deep south, a lot of that is probably environmental. We probably had the right weather conditions in the spring, where during the time period in April and May when the hens were mostly sitting on their nest, it was fairly dry, which is usually good. If it rains a lot, typically we don't see as good a hatch, but last year that period was really dry. But on the flip side, you don't want to be in like extreme drought during the summer because once the poults hatch, they're really sensitive to insect communities, and insects are tied to lush, abundant vegetation. And so if the weeds dry out, the grasshoppers sort of die off, and so you need just enough rains periodic throughout the summer to keep things green and lush, but not so much that we get super wet. And we had that last summer, and so we saw, like I said, by far the best hatch of my 15 years working for MDWFP, and really one of the best hatches statewide since we've been recording brood data going all the way back to the mid 90s. And like I said earlier, I mean, we're seeing the results of that already. I've been getting, texts and pics from people all winter sitting on deer stands, looking at big flocks of turkeys. Had a gentleman about 2 weeks ago show me a video of a flock of 100 turkeys that had been videoed from a deer stand, out in a grain field. So that's really welcome news. This is like I said, in my time here with MDWFP, this may be the first time where the entire state had a good hatch. We've had other years where parts of the state will do good and other parts not so good, but really it seemed like last summer everybody did great, and it's a real shot in the arm we needed.
Well, how do you get that data? What are the data sources for that data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the ways we measure the hatch, the primary way, is through what we call our brood survey. And essentially we have everybody who works for our agency, whether they be, a conservation officer on the law enforcement side, a biologist on my side of the fence. And we also work with outside partners like other conservation groups, some private timber companies, even private individuals that have a turkey interest. They record the number of turkeys they're seeing during the summertime. During the months of June, July, and August, they're recording the number of hens, the number of poults, the number of gobblers, and stuff like that. And from that, we can get kind of a relative gauge of how good the hatch was. And, most every state within the range of the wild turkey in the United States does that same survey. And we've, as a group, collectively across the country over the last few years, with as much worry as there's been about turkeys, we've tried to kind of standardize all the protocols so that we can compare data with one another, apples to apples. But like I said, I as the numbers were rolling in last summer, I couldn't believe how good it was looking. And when the dust settled, the 2022 hatch is probably about, in the top 3 or 4 or 5 since we've been recording that kind of information all the way back into the 90s. So this year, what that means for turkey hunters is there's going to be a lot more turkeys in the woods, a lot more jakes in the woods. Maybe some frustration this year because of that, but 2024 should be outstanding.
Yeah, so they see a lot of turkeys, but they just can't find that long beard.
That's right. That's right.
But that's the beauty of turkey hunting, isn't it, man? Just draw on that turkey in close so you can get a good look at it. And see if that's the trophy you want to take. And if you have to pass through a lot of young birds to find that trophy, man, that bodes well for you for years to come, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. And really, last summer was exceptional, but we've had some really good hatches over the last couple of years. So I feel like, we've been moving toward a better place than we've been over the last decade or a little more. So that's encouraging for me.
That's exciting to hear. Hey, listen, now that we're getting into that mode, we'll have you back in the next few weeks and just get an update on how things are going. But this has been Adam Butler.
Absolutely.
Thank you, my friend. This is Adam Butler, the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday. And as I always say, stay safe when you're out in the outdoors. Don't take anything for granted from a safety point of view. We'll have a great week. We'll see you later.
Mississippi.